Thank you. So what I want to talk to you about is the idea or the ideal of citizenship. I think that this idea is critical to how we have good lives as individuals, but it's also critical to how we face up to some of the enormous challenges that we face in the 21st century. The problem is that we might recognize the word citizenship, but we've somehow lost the meaning. It's like we've put the word in a strange little box and we put it up on a shelf somewhere. We've really forgotten what it really means, where it really comes from, what it's really about. So I hope this talk might help offer a different vision of what citizenship is to some of the ways people use the word citizenship, because I just think that it's just so important. But, you know, what are my qualifications for talking about any of this? I'm not sure what's right, but my training is as a philosopher. So I studied philosophy, politics and philosophy, and I have a PhD in philosophy. But really, most of what I've learned is through doing stuff. Sometimes when you have to write, you know, even on immigration forms and things, you have to write what your job is. And so sometimes I use the word social activist, and that's just simply in a way because I don't really know what my proper job is or has ever been or what I've ever done, really. Just keep kind of doing stuff. And I got into this when in 1988, it was the winter of 1988, and I was a health service management trainee. And I was sent down as part of my training to an institution, or what was then called a mental handicap hospital in East Sussex. And I arrived, it was a cold day, 3 grim buildings where people were living really difficult lives. It was a really kind of grim institutional environment. The regime was tough. I don't know if people are even familiar with these things anymore. We as a society don't really talk about what we've done to so many hundreds of thousands of people over our history. Institutions, mental handicap hospitals, asylums, prisons, workhouses, poorhouses, concentration camps were all dreamed up, sadly, largely in the 19th century, but actually were used increasingly through the 20th century as ways of controlling people, controlling ordinary people, taking people out of places and putting them into other places. Much of this is to do with strange ideas that people had, but also to do with the need for social control as people were forced off the land into cities, into jobs where people had to work incredibly long hours for very low pay, and where people who needed extra help or people who didn't fit in would be just removed. This is still our legacy today, and it still has a big impact on the world. So part of my experience there was a sense of injustice and anger looking at all of these things going on, but actually that isn't the most important thing that I experienced. The most important thing I experienced was meeting people with learning disabilities for the first time. Meeting people, some people had visual impairments, were blind, some people weren't mobile with legs, some people didn't use words, people looked maybe a bit different. But every single one of them was just like a wonderful, beautiful human being. That was like so obvious being there. And they were all just trying to make sense of how to live in this kind of crazy environment that they'd had no control over. They hadn't chosen to be there. And so leaving that and thinking about what I was going to do with my life, I suppose I had this sense that, well, this is really what I've got to do something about. And not so much just responding to the negativity, but how do we help make the world more inclusive, more joyous, more diverse, less boring? Yeah, I mean, it's kind of boring to try and make everything the same, to try and get rid of diversity. And so for many years, a lot of my life was involved in helping closing these institutions, in helping people move into their own homes, in helping people buy their own homes, in fact. We started to do very innovative things. We help people recruit their own support teams, get their own budgets. We help people find jobs, help people contribute to the community, help people form friendships, help people find love. In other words, we try to figure out how to help people to be citizens. Oh, and this is my friend Wendy Perez. And Wendy is a woman with learning disabilities that I've done a lot of work on these ideas on. So I'm going to share with you some of the ideas that Wendy and I developed, which we call the keys to citizenship. And why Wendy and I think that citizenship is such a useful word is it's a word that dignifies our kind of everyday life. It reminds us that we all have rights and we all have responsibilities, that we're all equal and that we all belong together. So it's a very, very important word. And we developed this kind of framework that I'm going to talk you through for the 7 keys to citizenship. And the first key to citizenship is meaning, to have a life of meaning. In a way, that's not hard to explain because I think everybody here will know what it means to be doing something meaningful, to have something meaningful in your life. People have gifts, they have interests, they have passions that are truly theirs. And they're all completely unique, aren't there? I don't know, I doubt there's any other Bolton Wanderers fans in the audience. There's just me, I suspect, isn't there? You know, so there are things that, you know, I care about that are just unique to me. And that's a good thing. I don't need you all to be Bolton Wanderers fans. You should probably be Doncaster Rovers fans or something, shouldn't you? So we all have those unique things that are unique to us. But it's possible, and we've probably all experienced this too, it's possible to be doing things that feel meaningless, that don't feel right, that feel like they're taking us in the wrong direction. This is not just an experience for people with disabilities, it's an experience, I think, for many people, that they, as my friend Wendy puts it, they've been put in a box and they're not doing what's right for them. So meaning is the heart of citizenship. Oh, so I should have flicked there. The second key to citizenship is freedom. I mean, historically, that's one of the things we always associate with citizenship. In a way, to be a citizen is not to be a slave, historically, to be under somebody's control. Freedom in our everyday sense, we often take for granted, but it's really, really important to be free. It's really important to be able to choose what you do, what job you have, what friends you have, how you spend your time. It's really, really risky if other people have control over those decisions, because even with good intentions, people are very likely to make wrong decisions about what's important to you. Nobody knows you like you know you. And also, it's important to have, like, the dignity of the risk of freedom. It's important to be able to make mistakes that are your mistakes, that you can learn from. For people with disabilities, sometimes they have the additional burden of maybe very much relying on other people's interpretations of what you need. So what we've learned, though, is that everybody can be free, but what it takes for everybody to be free is for people to pay attention, for people to approach people with an attitude of love, to really listen carefully, to watch the expressions that people make, to look at the behavior that people have. Everybody can free, but we make freedom happen. So freedom is kind of like the pathway for citizenship to become real. And the third key to citizenship is money. I think we all know that we all need money. We need money to operate in the real world. Historically, again, the philosopher Aristotle said that you can no more make a city of paupers, then you can make a city of slaves. Actually having enough money to be free, to not be dependent, to not be begging, is an essential part of citizenship. And of course, if we can get paid work, that's a way of getting money. But for many people, paid work isn't a possible route for resources, so it's also important that we have a decent benefit system. And many people are doing forms of work, and this is something we really need to think about, that are never going to be paid for. Like the most important work in the world is surely being a mother, but nobody pays you to be a mother. So we've created an economic system where the most important work isn't even paid for. And that's why people like me are also very involved in a campaign for something called basic income, which is making sure that everybody gets a basic income to live on. And if you want to find out more about basic income, there are actually lots and lots of really good TED Talks on basic income, so I'd encourage you to look up those. Not only must we all have enough money, but we must ensure that we don't have too much money. That might sound a bit odd, doesn't it? But in a way, the modern world, people talk as if having more and more is always good. But one of the things we learn is that people with too much money stop behaving like citizens, stop thinking of themselves as citizens, stop thinking of themselves as equal. A few years ago, I met a young woman who'd been going door to door, collecting money on behalf of charities. She told me that she'd just quit her job in disgust. She'd been going around poorer communities where people would always try and give from their poverty. Then she went to wealthy communities. She couldn't even get past the electric gates. You know, our image of how the world works is often very inaccurate. The people who really understand the value of community, of citizenship, are often those who are hardest up, those who really recognize what we need in life. Fourth key to citizenship is help. Again, often in the world, we often talk about as if independence is the most important thing. We need to be independent. But nobody's independent. It doesn't make any sense. Human beings are not independent kinds of people. Like, we all need help all the time. Everything that we do really depends on things that other people do for us. And sometimes that's through services, sometimes it's things we pay for, sometimes it's through family and friends. But I think one of the most inspiring examples and most important examples of good help is what we'd call peer support or mutual aid. That's when people help each other, people helping people as equals. And in Doncaster, People Focus Group Doncaster, or PFG Doncaster, is, in my opinion, one of the most inspiring global examples of this. There are 3,500 people in Doncaster, people with mental health needs, people with disabilities, people in poverty, people who faced really tough times, who figured out that the most powerful thing you can do is help each other. And that process of helping is one that kind of is like doubly empowering. Because when you get help from somebody who's gone through tough times, you see in them an inspiration for yourself. It's very different from getting help from a professional, from a service, to get help from a peer. And I remember going to a meeting facilitated by the founder of PFG, Kelly Hicks, and Kelly facilitated the group. The group talked about all of their problems. The key question Kelly asked at the end of that meeting is, what are we going to do about that? And it's that sense of what good help means that is the foundational rock for citizenship. The fifth key to citizenship is having a home. Like, probably we all know personally how important a home is. It's important to have a place that's private, that's secure, that you feel safe in. But historically, homes have also been really important because they root people as citizens. When somebody has a home, you recognize that they belong in your neighborhood, they belong in your community. That's why it's really, really important that we tackle the problems of homelessness. That's why it's really, really important that we welcome refugees and migrants and people fleeing hardship, poverty, or war, and we give them a home, and we work out how to do that. For too many people with disabilities today, it's still the case that even when we've closed the big institutions, when people need help, we're often moving them into residential care outside their own city, certainly outside their own neighbourhood, far too often. That's how most of the funding in social care is still spent. So we're still excluding people even today. We're still, in a sense, taking people away from homes rather than creating a world where everybody can have a home. It's homes that root our citizenship. The sixth key to citizenship is community. What is community? Well, community is any time we get together with other people, and sometimes we might be a bit confused about what that is, but actually there's lots of this, isn't it? When you go to work, you're going into a form of community life. When you go to school, you're going into a form of community life. When you go to the gym, it's a form of community life. When you go to church, it's another part of community. When you go with your friends for a drink at the pub or a coffee place, it's part of the community. That's community. Here today in Doncaster at TEDx Doncaster, we're in community. We're in a community of people wanting to learn from each other and think and get inspired. Sometimes we kind of complain about, like, communities aren't what they used to be, there's a lack of community. Well, what does that really mean? I think it really just means that's on us, isn't it? Because community is just us. Community is just citizens choosing to come together and create stuff or not. So if there's a lack of community, then we need to wake up, don't we? We need to wake up, get organised, do stuff that we care about, pull other people together to make things happen, because that's how we change the world. And it's also how we give meaning and depth to the things that are meaningful to us. All our gifts, all of our interests, all of our passions, the things that make our life meaningful, only really come to full life through the community. So kind of community is citizens in action. And the seventh key to citizenship is love. I mean, in a way, love comes out of community, comes out of people coming together. It's what community creates the opportunities for friendships and partnerships and family. But we aren't very good at talking about love. There's lots of songs about it, but we don't talk about it very much. We don't recognise actually people need the love of family. They need the love of romantic love and sexual love. They need friends. People need neighbours. People need even permission sometimes to love themselves, to recognise that they, in their body, whatever shape it is, however they look, are lovable, are worth loving, are worth something. For people with disabilities, again, this is sometimes an extra challenge. Like, there are so many people with disabilities who are not encouraged to form relationships, who are even penalised if they form a family, can have their children taken off them for no good reason at all. So as a society, we need to get bolder about talking about love and its importance, and the fact that we all really have a right to love and a right to be loved. So love is kind of is in a way the fruit of citizenship, but it's also the seed. It's also what gives life to citizenship. So to end, really, I really just want to try and reinforce what I think the lessons of some of this might be. The word citizenship, you know, even if it comes with this baggage sometimes, people start thinking it's about excluding people, it's about have you got the right passport. This is the wrong meaning of citizenship. We need to move away from thinking about citizenship as a way of excluding people and start to recognise that the only way to include everybody is to see everybody as a citizen. Forget passports. Just recognise that everybody is equal and everybody is wonderfully different. And how we create a great world is by embracing that diversity in the community that we build together. In order to do that, we do need to do things differently. We need to recognise that we need to welcome and include people. But that's on us. It's part of the job of being a citizen. It's also on us as a citizen to make sure we're taking care of each other, that we're contributing and helping and looking out for our neighbours and our friends and our family and everybody else. It's also really important that we recognise that citizens must share resources, physical resources, the space, places and money fairly so that everybody can flourish. It's really important that we get better at making decisions together. It's called democracy, but our current model of democracy is very, very different from the kind of ideal of democracy that's like over 3,000 years old, where people would sit down and work together and work out things together. We need to think differently about how we do democracy so that everybody is truly involved in making decisions. We don't just leave the decisions to a small number of people. And lastly, we need to take responsibility as citizens for the planet that we live on and for the diverse forms of life on this planet. We need to act from our responsibility. In this way, we can get over the divisions of the sexism and the racism and the different prejudices that divide us and start to recognise that we all can come together to create a world where everyone matters. Thank you.